Probably will. Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is a workshop intended to allow the staff to present an update to the Triumph funding, activities and applications, and awards. Present new or revised projects for Triumph funding, and allow for the board discussion on supported and priority projects for Triumph Gulf Coast funding. You'll have an opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. If you want to fill out a card and give it to Miss Patty, I'll call those after our presentation. Shireen?
Well, thank you. As always, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedules for these workshops.
We had to be here.
You had to be there, I know, but I'm still thanking you.
Okay.
And for all the members of the audience that come and participate. Well, before we get started into the actual presentation, there are a couple of things that I wanted to update you on that Triumph, like many of the things that we work on, they're moving targets. And it's possible that it changed after I left my office, because of legislative issues and Triumph decisions. But one of the things that I want to update you on is at the last Triumph meeting, which kind of happened, and I got information after my agenda item, my workshop item was due, some information came in, and I want to add that today, is Triumph has decided to create a Triumph Hurricane Michael Disaster Fund, and they're going to set aside $15 million of their allocation of the Triumph money just for Bay, Franklin, Gulf, and Wakulla County to apply for.
15 million out of how much?
Out of their 93 million. So what this means, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what it means, because they're not changing the criteria, they're not loosening any of the restrictions regarding clawbacks and performance measures, and it's going to be a focus for ad valorem, which that is needed especially in Bay and Gulf County, because the homes that were destroyed in those counties are homestead, so they are, primary residents.
And one of the criteria of the Triumph money was that it has to reduce ad valorem taxes.
Yes, sir.
And we talked about this, not to dwell into it too much, at the Regional Planning Council. A lot of these affected counties, their tax base, a lot of it's just gone. So
exactly.
It's either raise taxes on everybody that's left, or Triumph's going to have to make up.
They're going to help, but there again, they're going to have to do performance measures and clawbacks, which makes it a little tricky how they're going to do that. I checked with Brad, and so did David, in Wakulla County. We're okay with ad valorem. I think we had 18 homes destroyed, but only 2 of those were homestead. The others were secondary. Franklin County, most of their homes are secondary. They weren't homesteaded, so they are kind of like we are. They're not as bad. But I know that Gulf County has written several letters to the legislature and Triumph. They need help with ad valorem.
Sheree, is this money you're talking about, this $15 million, out of the Triumph $996 million, or out of the $504 million? I mean, the 996
the Triumph,
is
the Triumph.
The 996.
Their pot, not the county allocation.
Okay.
Okay. I know, it's when you look at the allocation, it has so many branches on it, it almost takes a workshop to explain the allocation. So anyway, they are creating a special application if you want to say that your project is for disaster recovery, or any projects that are for future disaster related, for preparedness. So they are going to meet on this coming Monday, and their staff are going to present the resolution they were asked to draft and the amended application, which will have a certification on it that you as a board of directors will be required to sign, certifying that everything in the application is true and that it's essential to recovery or preparedness. So I don't have the application, so I really don't know what else they're changing, and I won't know till Monday. So that kind of like put a different little wrinkle in the whole workshop, but we'll just, keep going. like I say, their next meeting is next Monday. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, so this wouldn't change the county's allocation. That's going to all stay the same. It wouldn't be affected by that at all.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, now then, another thing that has happened, and it will not affect our allocation, House Bill 191 was filed by Representative Drake, and Senate Bill 1162 was filed by Senator Gaynor. And those pieces of legislation are known as the Northwest Florida Rural Inland Affected Counties Recovery Fund. And it's specific for Calhoun, Gadsden, Holmes, Jackson, Jefferson, Liberty, and Washington counties, collectively the upland counties. Now, what they are wanting to do, what this proposed legislation does, is it takes 5% of the 25% that is maintained by the state from the total $2 billion settlement and puts it in a special recovery fund at the Department of Economic Opportunity just for those counties. And there again, it's under the Rural Infrastructure Grant Program, so all the criteria for that grant would also apply to these funds. But those two bills have not been heard in a committee yet. And that's not good unless they can amend rules, as you know, as legislature, moves forward. But legislature starts March 3rd. Committee meetings will be over about the end of March. So they basically have to get these bills heard in committee as soon as possible. So that's where we are with those.
And if I might, that 25% is currently just goes into general revenue, so it's not earmarked for anything specific. So that wouldn't affect us either as far as our county allocations.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now the Gulf Consortium has the 15 counties from Jefferson County down, Taylor County, Jefferson County, and down to Monroe County. At the last consortium meeting, they presented an idea that they should be awarded.
Those are the non-wedded counties, right?
Right. Not that they should get 5% of the state's 25%, that it should not go to anyone else. So they, as part of that board meeting, the Gulf Consortium staff were directed to draft a letter that will be presented at the March Gulf Consortium meeting for discussion by the full Gulf Consortium board. David and I have the letter. As you know, he's on jury duty this week, so when he gets back, we'll be going over it, and then I'm sure he'll be addressing each of you in terms of what his recommendations are. So now that I have those three things out of the way that are pertinent to this workshop, I'll go right into the actual meat of this workshop. Okay, so anyway, the first thing we're going to do is just kind of recap the triumph, the settlement, the legislation. So basically, a new section was created, Section 288.80, and it created the Gulf Coast Corridor Act. And basically what that is everybody calls it Triumph. So throughout, I'll just call it Triumph because that's how everybody recognizes it. So it created the board, their duties and responsibilities. It established the criteria and objectives for projects to be funded from those monies. It restricted the money to the 8 counties, Escambia to Wakulla County. It provided for allocations of the settlement to Triumph, the state, and all of the 8 counties. It created a trust fund at the state where all the funds get deposited into and then distributed pursuant to the legislation. And it also included a role for each Board of County Commissioners of those 8 counties. The current board is Don Gates, he's chairman, and I forgot I'm supposed to click. Don Gates is chairman, Alan Bentz is vice chairman, Stephen Riggs is treasurer, and then the other 3 members are Pam Dana, Ben Lee, and Jason Shove. The the Triumph Board has several charges, and one is they have to establish and review the priorities for economic recovery, diversification, and enhancement of the 8 counties, and all of that must be based on the statutory criteria. They have to establish the application and the award process, which they've done. And then before they can even take up an application that is being recommended for award by their staff, they have to publish it for 14 days before they can discuss it. And then they make awards and enter into agreements based on their statutory charges in Section 288.8017. And this is kind of a recap of the funding allocation that's in statute. So the total settlement was $2 billion for economic recovery, and that's what we call the Triumph money. Of the $2 billion, 25% stays with the state in general revenue, which is $500 million. Okay, then Triumph gets 75%, which is around $1.5 billion. Then of the 75% that goes to Triumph, around $996 million of that is for the Triumph discretionary pool for projects they want to award or to match the county allocations.
Most of that's probably going to be spent west of us, correct?
I would, if
Reasonably assume.
I were,
Pensacola, Panama City.
and I think there's a couple of projects in here that what I'm going to talk about, and some things I've heard in the news that kind of might show you how that money could be spent. And then there's a $504 million is allocated to the 8 counties, and we each one get our fair share, which is about $63 million per county. And that doesn't mean the money comes straight to us. It just means that Triumph has to give that much money to projects in our area.
In Wakulla or just our area?
And they've not defined exactly how they mean that yet. They've said that they could create a project in Franklin County, and if it did good in Wakulla County, then whatever was needed for that project could go against us. But they haven't really come out and done clear.
It doesn't have to be within a certain geographic border then.
As long as you get the benefits. And I brought the statute with me just in case I needed to read it. Okay, and this is what's really important here are the project categories, because every project has to fit into one of these categories. Even the Hurricane Michael Benefit Fund has to fit into one of these categories. Triumph cannot change this because it is in statute.
Only one. It just has to meet one of the criteria, which ad valorem tax reduction for the hurricane would be.
Would be one of them. And then rural infrastructure grants, that's the one I talked about, where the bills have been filed. That's at Department of Economic Opportunity. Public infrastructure, there again, Senator Representative Vince has said several times this does not mean leaky pipes. And I have an example of a project that was awarded for a water and sewer project, and that I can show you what they mean when they talk about performance metrics and what it takes to get a sewer or water project funded. Establish and maintain equipment and train personnel for local action plans of response to disasters. That's the category we're trying to get our 2 projects under for the library / high-risk pre-disaster shelter and the first responder communication system. And then there are grants to support educational programs, and Wakulla School Board was one of the first projects to be awarded, and they received $3.2 million for their certification program. And I've brought samples of the metrics that they have to meet or they have to pay their money back.
And how long a time period? Wakulla County has allocated how much money? 80-something million, would you say?
Over 15 years.
Over 15 years, okay.
63 million.
Whatever.
But it's just like the restore money. It doesn't mean that we get our,
Right.
but it's just at the end of 15 years, that's where we need to end up at. Or that's the idea anyway.
That's the target.
And then grants to support other counties and our county with workforce skills not confined to a single employer. And that's a lot like the school board certification program. Those are workforce skills for multiple employers, not just one business. And then grants to tourism entities, what that means is that money would be to Visit Florida. Then Visit Florida, being the head tourist department for the state, they would have to do the promotion and the advertising or give grants to the individual counties. I understand that there was an 8-county group led by Walton County that were discussing that, but it hasn't gotten off the ground yet because they were talking about doing an application and doing some promotional and advertising on behalf of the 8 counties. And then again, it's the big, may supplement, but you can't supplant what what you should be spending your dollars for, your county dollars.
So question about that, and I don't think we have any desire, I personally don't have any desire to use it to offset ad valorem. I don't think we need it here in Wakulla County. But if a county has the ability to increase ad valorem, wouldn't that be considered a supplant if they're using that instead of increasing to 10 mills?
Well, and there again, for the Hurricane Michael, I think they are making some exceptions, but there are some counties that I think you can't increase it beyond 10 mil.
Right.
And they're having to look at that because like in, I believe it is Franklin County, they're topped out. So if they did need the money, they would not, I guess, not consider it being supplanting.
Right. I guess maybe they'll consider that before they figure out a portion would be supplanted and a portion would not, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and two, the way they talked about structuring some of the grants under that would have to do with tax rebates to businesses coming in. So I'm not exactly sure how they're thinking about scheduling it, and so that's why until we have the meeting on the 25th, or Triumph does, and they figure that out, I really can't give you much more information because I don't think they know either. And I said that very quietly. And so here is some of the way they're going to measure results. Generate maximum estimated economic benefits, and that means number of net new jobs created by a project. That means you're going to, when you create those jobs, you're going to track them, you're going to measure them, and they're going to have a person in them. So when you do your application and you say you're going to create 10 new jobs, you need to have a really good idea about what classification those jobs are going to go in the big world of ONET, which is part of the federal government of how they classify positions and wages. And construction jobs do not count because those are considered temporary. And jobs have to meet average wages, and they prefer that those wages be above the average wage. So there are a lot of things like that. They also want to know that projects are going to infuse new capital into the area, that the capital investment is going to be tangible and trackable. And that's when they say economic benefits, that's two of the things they're talking about. Are you going to increase household income? And obviously you do that by creating new jobs where people can get promotions or new jobs and new training. They want you to leverage existing facilities. They want private companies or institutions to partner with local governments. They want projects that also benefit the environment in addition to the economy. Outcome measures, again, that goes back to you're creating 10 jobs. These 10 jobs are going to do this, they're going to be paid this, and you're going to sustain them for so long at these wages. Of course, the educational component, you're going to have school districts and other, K through 20 in the
slide.
It's right there. And then the partnering with the Visit Florida. And I can tell you, these are the Triumph buzzwords, and they said them in the very first meeting, and they repeat them at every meeting, so I feel compelled to repeat them here. Transformational, economic diversification, infrastructure, sustainable. You got to have outcomes, outputs, and your agreements will have clawbacks.
Clawback meaning if you
You
don't
will pay
meet,
the
do what
money.
you say did, you're gonna pay it back.
And they are not waiving any of this for the Hurricane Michael Recovery Fund when they don't have the legal authority to do so. Now, let's get into here are some high-level stats on applications submitted year-to-date. There's been 183 project applications submitted to Triumph as of February 8th. That's $1.4 billion, which is almost the entire pot of money. 70 projects, or 40%, a little bit less than half, have been determined ineligible for various reasons. Either their performance metrics weren't there, the return on the investment wasn't there, it didn't meet the criteria. There's a list for each one was completely different.
Out of the 183.
Out of the 183, 7 have been basically rejected. 10 projects of the 183 have been awarded, 93.9 million. That's less than 1% of the projects since 2017 when they started taking applications have been awarded. And on the next page, I have a spreadsheet that shows you the 10 applications.
Is this, sorry, Sheree, but this Escambia County, for example, $56 million, is that out of the discretionary money, or is that out of the money allocated for Escambia County?
Well, they haven't said.
Haven't said.
Right, which leads us back to the $63 million.
So anyway, at the meeting on February 8th, they came in and they asked for another $10 million.
That means the Triumph Board doesn't have to say, okay, we're gonna grant you, we're gonna pay it out of the discretionary money.
They should, and I think they'll get there. They just haven't. They're not at that point now, I think, because they haven't gotten near the threshold.
So they haven't actually spent any of this money yet then.
So I think that's why. So they haven't pushed up against those thresholds. And I think that there may be a bigger project coming down that may have some influence on some of this. But as you'll see, 1, 2, 3, 4, of those 10, only 4 of those projects have a signed agreement and are actually moving forward. The remainders have what they call a term sheet where they're still negotiating metrics and clawbacks.
Now, Wakulla County doesn't have anything beside it.
It should have been 1 asterisk
One
that's been
asterisk,
awarded.
signed agreement.
In Walton County, they received a workforce grant, and I looked at it, and it's for getting those inmates who are getting ready to be released prepared for jobs. So I sent it to Jared, and he's interested in it, so I'll be working with Jared, and hopefully the school board will assist in maybe coming up with something for our Wakulla County in that area.
Because really the only way for us to know what they will and won't approve or what they like is once they've started approving stuff. Then we could say these are the kind of things that they will approve.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been doing. I've been going through all the applications and getting information off of them and just learning as much as I can so that when I develop our applications that, you know, I'll be better able to do it and understand what they are and aren't. But also the Triumph staff, I will tell you, they're wonderful. Dr. Rick Harper and Corey Henderson will sit down with you and they will go through it and they will help you a lot. They won't do it, but they will help guide you and explain to you why your application is not going to be an A project.
On the Walton County VOTAC training program, is that through are they coordinating with their school system, or you don't know?
I don't know, but when I read the application, I really couldn't tell,
Okay.
but I don't know how they could do it without their school system.
I mean, these are inmates though, right? I mean, I'm not going to take
They-
inmates to,
But
But they could be after school with the tech ed center.
Yeah, can't, and so anyway, I sent it to Jared and said, and he is interested, and so that's something we'll be working on. Okay, next slide. Here are some examples that I took right out of signed agreements on what the clawbacks look like. So if you don't meet these performance measures, you would pay the money back. And for our school board, by 2023, they have to have given out at least 300 certifications.
This is our school. This is the project we got, right?
This is Bobby Pierce, Mr.
Okay.
Pierce. If they haven't given out, if 300 students haven't graduated with those certifications, then there will be clawbacks. And not only is it 300 certifications, but then it's broken down into subgroups for each one of those certifications. Then the next performance measure is that at least half of those 300 students that graduate, they must have a full-time job with wages equal to or greater than the average entry-level wage for the occupation that they received their certification for, or they pay the money back.
Well, I mean, not to give the whole pot back, I assume there's kind of like liquidated damages, basically. They got to, you know, if you don't meet, then you pay.
But that lets you see that this is how important those performance measures are.
They're not being arbitrary. I mean, these are specific goals they got to meet.
Yes, and that means that when you write your application, you need to know what you're putting at risk and what you're willing to risk. Okay, then when I saw they had awarded one for water and sewer, I went, well, let me look at that. Well, they tied this project to business development and job creation. So the city, or Walton County, is effect on the hook for this money, okay? Not any of the businesses, and it's specific to the Shoal River Ranch mega project.
What is it? What is that?
It's a
Development.
Like an industrial park or something?
it's a residential commercial.
It's a Southwood-ish.
Okay. So the way, and this is where they say it's not for leaky pipes, it's for business development. And what is meant by that is Walton County working with the businesses, if they ever actually get any of this money to construct the pipes, 3 years after they receive their final payment. So let's just say they get the $1.5 million in 3 years, and 3 years from now they're completed. Then 3 years after that, they have to prove by tracking these positions that they've created 250 net new positions in Okaloosa County with an average wage in a targeted industry. And a targeted industry is one of those defined by EFI, you know, aerospace dynamics, banking, things like that. Then they have to show that 150 net new jobs were created at or above 150% of the county's average wage for a period of 3 years. Yeah. And they have to show that at least $25 million in new capital investment was made by a company that is in one of Florida's targeted industries, and the new capital investment was maintained for a period of 3 years.
So do you know this clawback criteria, is this something that the applicant put in there and they said, we think we can achieve this, and so they're holding them to that standard, or did Triumph somehow create these standards?
Triumph didn't create that. The counties are responsible for recommending their clawbacks, and then they can negotiate them during the term sheet.
The counties are, or the applicants?
This applicant was Walton County.
Well, I'm thinking going back to the school, you're going to have in 2022, you're going to have newly graduated people that have the certificates. I would think you could probably pump those out, but they're just entering the labor force in the brand new industry, and now we're saying that half of them have to be more than a starting salary. So who established that criteria?
That would be done, the applicant, whether whoever you are, you're responsible for offering what your performance measures are going to be.
Okay.
Now, they can be negotiated. If you offer something and Triumph says that's too low, start again, then, it's like buying a car. You walk in, you don't tell them how much money you have. You want to know how much they want for the car. So it's a negotiation process.
Okay.
But this is 1999. Let's see, this program should be off and running by 2021. I wish Sonny was here, but it should be ready because they've already got the money. They're already doing construction on the facilities. And I think the program might be up and running by next school session. So that's basically, 2 or 3 years to have these graduates or these kids with certifications done by then.
And earning more than entry-level people that are
But
out there in the market with them,
So if
competing for the same
so
job.
if you have, say for instance, the program's up and running next year,
Yeah.
you enroll children, school kids. I don't know what the correct term is for them. I call mine a child. You enroll them in this program. Then by the end of next year, which would be 2019, 2020, you should have graduates from this program. So you would want to get them in the labor force as quick as possible.
Does it matter if someone graduates here and then they take a job in Kansas and they're making more money, but they're not in the geographic area?
I did not see that as a requirement, but it could be, and I just didn't see it.
Okay.
But those are the kind of things, like I say, they don't tell you what your metrics are going to be. You have to know to some degree what your risk is and what you're willing to risk and what you can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be fact-based. You can't say we're going to create jobs. You have to know what jobs you're creating. And there's a way to measure those through ES-202 data through the Department of Labor, and that's done by Social Security number or unique number, employee number. And that data comes down quarterly to the state, and there are reports that you can run that will bounce off of that data from employer files and show you whether or not those jobs are really there, because they track them very closely. That's how they get the unemployment data. And the same thing, there's a thing called FETPIT at Department of Education, and it's the same thing. It's a student database, and it tracks students, and you'd be surprised that if you graduated from college, you're probably still being tracked to see if you're employed or unemployed, to see if the field that you graduated in is the field they're actually
I
employed
graduated
in.
from college.
So there's a lot of things like that they measure, and they call you completers and exiters, and whether or not you're actually working in your field, and that's kind of how they try and identify emerging jobs and occupations that are kind of going by the wayside. I mean, it's a lot more complex than that, but that's kind of a high-level Sharia explanation.
But it would have to be out of, those jobs would have to be out of the geographic region.
Outside?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why number 2 doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because you're going to have 300 certifications.
They're not going to all work here.
They're not going to work here.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
But see, the one of the goals that may not be obvious here is that companies' rhetoric is, well, we don't set up a shop there because you don't have the workforce with these certifications. So you would hope that once this program gets up and running, that maybe a company would start here because we have a ready, reliable, trained workforce.
But I doubt we need 300 HVAC technicians in Wakulla County alone.
Well, there are other, it said, not to beat this to death, but 300 certifications in K5 digital tools, 50 certifications, 8 digital tools, 30 certifications in HVAC, and 30 in automotive. So whatever K5 digital tools, I don't know what
I'm
that
not sure what
certification
that
is.
is.
But so the HVAC is actually only 30, it says.
Right. I see.
But I thought it's interesting, back to Okaloosa County that 5 years after final payment, they have to show at least 500 jobs.
Well, yeah, I thought that was a little much, but there again, it's for things that they don't normally fund, which is sewer and water. But the interesting thing is, like, when you look at it, you can have a company here, say for instance, we have several AC companies here, and maybe once we get this workforce, maybe they don't have enough workers right now to handle business in Franklin County on St. George Island. There's a big demand for HVAC people on St. George. I mean, you'd be surprised. But say, for instance, one of our local companies, when they get these graduates, they might be able to add workers here in the county. It doesn't mean you have to work in the county. You can be employed in the county, but like any other job, you can go work on St. George, or you can go work in East Point. I mean, you can work anywhere, but the job still counts in Wakulla County. So anyway, I wanted to give you examples of just from 2 projects, and like I say, that's not, that's 2 out of 10, and they're all different, and it's based on a lot of facts that and variables that just aren't represented here. But it's not easy, and I guess that's just it. Is they are making it difficult.
It's not a simple grant.
No. And you almost have to have a PhD in economics to write the economic impact statement, which I found one online, and I'm working on it.
PhD?
Anyway, I'm like going.
You can get them.
FSU, we reached out to FSU to help us with our economic, and they wanted $25,000 per application. So we took a step back and we're taking a breather. And like I say, I wanted to present that because that means that all the folks that have submitted applications, whether they're in Wakulla County or other counties, are having to do the same thing. So it's not easy money. It's hard to get, and you're on the hook for every dime you get. And your Triumph money is the last money to be paid out to you, and it cannot fund 100% of your project. Okay. There have, of the 83 applications, or the 183 applications, 15 of those applications were for projects in Wakulla County. Okay, so I have a little summary of that. There were 15 applications totaling $62.8 million.
Put Heather in charge of the clicker thing.
I know, I'm not, it's hard to talk and remember, chew gum and walk. One project was awarded, so we're one of the 10, to the school board, and that was $3.9 million, and that's the one we just spoke about. 6 applications were not approved for funding for various reasons. They either couldn't come up with the performance measures, the return on the investment was too low for Triumph to feel comfortable funding it, or they did not meet the criteria at all. And those applications are listed there. You've got St. Mark's had 2 projects, Gulf Specimens project, Panacea Oyster Co-op processing expansion, St. Mark's Refuge, and FSU College of Law Center. One application was withdrawn from the school board, and the reason why is when they submitted their pre-app and they started talking to Triumph, they realized that the way it was written was not quite the way maybe everybody wanted it. So they decided what they would do was they would take into consideration everything that Triumph had to say, and they basically are going back to the drawing board. The program has not been scrapped, but they're going to revise it and come up with a newer project, and then they'll come back to us with their revised scope.
Was this the one Bobby presented where they wanted to have basic, for lack of a better word, a college campus on the Wakulla High School? Like my daughter takes TCC classes now, but she takes them in, the high school classrooms. But he wanted to build a separate building for.
Right, and this is the one. And Triumph actually scheduled a meeting in Wakulla County about a year ago, where they had Franklin County, Wakulla County, and Gulf County school boards. to come in and talk about these types of projects, and it was very informative. And so Wakulla County School Board was the first to get their application off and running, and now Bath and Franklin are doing kind of mirror projects for their counties.
Vocational training?
So it was a win-win for all three counties. And then, as you know, we have two pre-applications that were approved for us to move forward to the final application, which was the first responder system. And then the second one was the county library, and we have changed that to county library / high-risk shelter.
Heather, can you click that? Okay. Sherry, please give that to Heather. Had nothing to do with it.
There are 5 applications or pre-apps that have been submitted to Triumph for review. Triumph has them, but they've not taken any action on them. And those are the TCC projects, TCC WIA projects, and the Panacea Oyster Co-op Wakulla Aquaculture Expansion.
Cherie, is there a window that you can submit projects annually, or is it just an ongoing process? So do they have a time period that they have to respond? So how do you get an update where you stand?
You call, or you look at their website.
They don't have a deadline to provide.
So they can just drag it out for,
15 years.
Except they have to give it all away.
Put them on the back burner, for lack of a better word.
so somebody else could eat up our money and our project doesn't, I mean, I guess, I don't understand why we don't get more. It seems like there would be a sunset time where they have to provide some sort of input either. I mean, do they tell you up front when you submit it that you haven't met the thresholds for your project to even move on?
What you do is you submit a pre-app,
Yeah.
and if they think it meets the requirements, then they basically invite you to complete the 29-page final application, and then you submit that. And normally the way we've been doing it is after you get through the pre-app, and if they think you meet the final, then you start meeting with their staff to hammer it out. And you may not have a final say because only Triumph can, make that decision, but you have a good feeling of where you're going to end up.
So the 2 pre-apps approved for submission, that means they looked at our pre-app for the first responder system in the library, and they said, okay, go ahead and submit a formal application. Now, the other 5, 4 of which are TCC and 1 is a Panacea Oyster Co-op, they've already passed that
And submitted
muster,
their,
right?
their-
They've been told, go ahead and submit a formal application.
And I believe most of them have submitted their formal applications already.
And that's on them. We don't. But Mike, back to your point, I suspect there's a big project coming down the pipe at some point, right? That they're going to try to soak a lot of the.
I would suspect.
But we still theoretically get our allocation, our county allocation, right? They can't take that unless they say we're doing something in Franklin County, Wakulla, it benefited you, so we're taking part of your money for that project.
Or it counts because we feel it has a regional impact, then we feel this is best for the
But it'd be hard to
AQA.
say it's a regional impact if it's an airport in Pensacola, for example.
But there could be another project coming down the pipe.
So the flip side of that, we train a bunch of HVAC technicians and they move to Gulf County to replace the homes. Can we say, well, that benefited them, count that toward their pot?
You could try, but I don't think it would work because
Triumph could though, right? The
because
board.
that would be basically between the school board and Triumph on how they negotiate that.
But both counties have to be willing to
I don't
say
think so.
that for each other.
I think it could be forced on us, right?
I think it's
They do
gonna
a
be
project in Franklin County, they say,
Triumph.
"Oh, this benefits you.
Here's your money.
We're
Or you
going
make
to
your
take
money."
part of your money to
Right.
help pay for it."
That's what
Well,
I mean by they
I don't think we have
agree.
to.
You're right, because,
No.
for instance, if I know it's Long Shot Senator Dunn is trying to make a pitch to Amazon. that'll never happen, but still, say you played that scenario, Triumph Board could at that point in time envelop it all and guarantee all that, because it would be a massive regional impact.
To build an
To the
Amazon
area.
distribution
Yeah,
center.
yeah.
somewhere.
25,000 jobs.
That's right, exactly. So understand, the whole point of this money was to give it a third, to give us a buffer to be away from just the aquaculture and the tourism. It was to give that third leg, and that's the reason they've focused on the aerospace industry and all these other industries that if something were to happen at the Gulf, you could still sustain. So that's the reason they're couching some of their money on the side to make sure that if that opportunity comes around, they'll have the money to put towards that.
I will tell you, at one of the earlier meetings, and it resonated with me, and I kind of like put it away, and that was, and I guess I'll always call him Senator Gates and Representative Bentz, because when I was in state government, they were senator and representative respectively. Senator Gates made a comment that he had been in touch with the U.S. DOT about a deal that he was like to see on whether or not the U.S. Department of Transportation would put matching funds in with Triumph funds for an interstate exchange. And then I knew that there was a development going in on a specific highway that was being discussed, that for businesses to be relocated there, it had to do some site certification, and it needed funding for this interstate exchange. And so then I hear in the news, Amazon, now then Congressman Gates, I believe it is talking about Amazon, the Panhandle would be a good location for the new Amazon headquarters.
There's been a lot of talk about relocating 98 more inland too, over the years. They could take this money, whatever, and say, we're going to move 98 in 4 miles and stop repairing.
Or they could take Highway 20, which is not developed very much, so you don't have a lot of businesses, utilities, or any of that to relocate, and Highway 20 could easily become another exchange.
And that's actually been talked to from District 3 of the DOT, that is on their radar potential.
Where is this potential, just out of curiosity, you can tell me the Amazon, what county?
Don't know. You all know as much as we do. I just use that as an example. That's
Bay
possible.
County. It's been talked
It's
about
not
Bay County.
Bay and Leon is what
Yeah.
Congressman Dunn is saying.
Is it I-85 that comes into Escambia County?
Mm-mm.
That
There's an I-70 something.
It's I-10, is it I-80? It's not 75, because
77? Is it 77?
So anyway, well, I look, just look at the map
might
and
be
see where the north-south interstate is in regards to I-10.
Big place.
And I would just probably look at some area around in there where there is a lot of land, and especially land that may have been damaged, that, forest. So, I mean, and I always say, well, if I can think of it, I know somebody a lot smarter than me's thinking about it.
School project.
So Cherie, would it be better for us, we have 2 projects in the hopper now,
Yes, sir.
correct? Would it be better that we put more projects in the hopper that can get funding?
I would
Maybe.
say yes, as long as we felt that they were in line with the criteria and that we felt truly are good projects. I wouldn't load it up with projects just to load it up.
Now, the clawbacks, for example, on our 2 projects that have been approved for pre-application, how can you do a clawback on a library? Or,
That's what I'm trying to figure out now.
okay, or on a
Emergency.
emergency.
Well, yeah, there's clawbacks on business, but there would be a less,
Okay.
you wouldn't have that same criteria.
Those are kind of,
That's
not
right.
a lot of risk involved.
There's not a lot of risk in
There
that,
doesn't.
that's right.
But you got to still show the economic benefit of the project, or you're not going to get past the approval stage to start.
That's right, you'll have to show the economic benefit as well as the emergency side of that.
Only in the application phase.
Only in the
Not
application phase.
5 years later.
That's right,
I mean,
that's
like,
right.
people
No,
that die or
no,
whatever.
when we develop our application, we kind of need to know what we're going to put out there. Because if you get past all the hurdles and you get an agreement, you want to know going into that agreement what risk the county is assuming and whether or not you're willing to take that risk. And that's why I've been looking and researching other states, and I have found some information that has some anecdotal information that I can kind of use to fill in the applications about the needs of these. So, you know, we're looking at some of it, like for the legislative packages, I put in the number of people that we would serve in the event we have another disaster. You know, that the shelter would be to serve, you know, the population. I didn't put in numbers, but it would be, you know, our population is 30,000, so actually we have the, you know, there's 30,000 people to pick from to go to a shelter. And so we have to look at things like that, like how many people would be served. Mhm. Mhm. And that's what we were saying, because when Hurricane Michael hit, we are driving people to Leon County. A lot of people don't want to leave the county because they don't have transportation to get back, and they want to be close to home, so they won't leave.
And we don't have a, sort of category 4, we don't have a cat.
Get them in.
High risk.
It's going to be 15 years.
And so what happens though, but if, in Franklin County is the same way, you know, if they're East Point, they don't want to leave, and they want to be able to get back home quickly.
High risk being,
During the storm.
but is it only for high risk
They
citizens or high risk storm?
Meaning that is where we would house folks during the storm, right before and during the
Needs shelter.
storm.
This is, we're not talking about a
it would
special
not be
needs
a
shelter.
special needs
Okay.
shelter.
Then after the storm, the idea is that's the reason we put in for generators, is to also to generate the gym at the community center. That would become our special needs or our post-storm, I forgot what the technical term they call it, that would be that shelter.
No,
And then the library would return.
David, we haven't designated a special needs shelter because those requirements are so restrictive.
You know what I mean. It would be that shelter.
Yeah, people get real weird in Tallahassee when you say.
Well, we're not in Tallahassee.
And an important thing there is our schools are emergency shelters now, and after a storm, everyone wants the schools back open as quickly as possible so parents can get back to work, get the kids back in school. So this would allow us to free the community center up as our long-term shelter if needed, instead of relying on the schools.
Schools are only designed for a certain storm too, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're really not set up for it. So that's what we want to do, is get set up for it.
I think they're up to a category 2.
Is it 2?
I think it's a
one was
2 or.
Well, they have a hallway that's a category 3.
Yeah.
A hallway. So
But this, but the high risk could be for anything below that, but that's like a 4 or 5, like a Michael. And like I say, it may be, you know, just people coming from Franklin County that need a place. They don't want to go all the way to Leon, and that, see, has a regional emphasis. So,
And
Serve Franklin County.
we were talking about the clawbacks for the 2 county projects also, and I think it's important to note that a first responder system and emergency shelter, those are projects that we need regardless of funding, regardless of who we get clawed back. Hopefully we don't get clawed back, but they're still, you know, vital projects that we need anyway. And so,
I can see it. I don't see how they could claw them back.
yeah.
they'll find a way.
I wouldn't, like you said, we got to do them anyway.
It's not a business venture.
That's right. It's not a business venture.
Infrastructure.
That's right.
And let's say these are the first projects that they've had of this nature, so it will be interesting to have that dialogue with staff to find out, you know, because we'll obviously present what we think.
They
might
haven't
be
even been
fun.
approved.
No.
So let's say, you know, we could say that our first clawback could be we're going to construct the library. I mean, so they may allow us to have clawbacks. I don't want to say simplified, but that easy to achieve, that are not related to jobs or capital investment. We'll see. I'm moving forward.
Hey, Heather. Wake up.
Okay, so in your role of compliance, we have had, this will be our second workshop, and then we've had updated the list a couple of times because we've had some new projects roll in, and then because of Hurricane Michael.
Skip a slide?
Hmm?
Heather, skip a slide?
I had it up there. She did.
Okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to give you these dates so you could see all the activities that we have done, and it makes the public know that we're staying on it, and we're keeping the ball rolling. We're not quite as slow as Triumph. I mean, we keep pushing things through.
Let me go back to the board mystery slide, board roles and actions. At one time, we were required to rank all projects submitted. Has that now gone away?
No, we're still doing that, but what that is straight from the statute. Submit to Triumph a list of recommended projects and programs, and we've been doing that. The other thing that we've been doing is that we have identified our priority projects on that list.
The county.
The boards.
What about the private people that have submitted? Are we going to be ranking them at some point?
You can.
We can or we have to?
You can.
You can.
You can.
Or cannot.
Or cannot.
Well, let's talk about that. So if anybody comes and wants to, it is a thing of approval for them to submit their application.
Right, they have to submit their application, but the statute is silent on who you rank as a priority. Your charge is to submit to Triumph a list of those projects that you recommend for funding. Triumph has requested, that's their preference, that you show your priority projects. So when they say your priority projects, they can be county projects, they can be school board projects, they can be private. They did not put criteria on defining who submitted a priority project. So if, say for instance, you had a business that was coming in here and they were going to create, 50 jobs, and you wanted to make that a priority, then you could recommend that as a priority child.
You don't have to.
They can still apply. We just get to recommend which ones we want as our priority.
We can.
Can.
We cannot.
Who's calling?
If the county did,
Go ahead.
if the county did recommend it, does it have to be a pass-through project?
If it is anything but a governmental entity, then we have to be the recipient, and then we have to sub-grant it to that private entity. They are not giving grants to private entities.
And if they fail to meet their metrics,
Are we
County's on the
responsible?
hook.
Unless they've partnered with another government entity, like TCC.
True.
I think that's the point I made last time. Is
Right.
So the TCC would be on the hook, not the county. Are we sure of that?
Because our name would not be, it's just like the school board. We're not part of that application. They are a legal entity and they have the authority.
The ones that we're setting ourselves up to be on the hook are the library and the
Shelter.
first responder.
Right.
That's it.
For now.
We are on the hook for those,
Right,
if we get approved.
right. But there again, and you can change your mind, like I say, because this is a constant moving process, and we might have a company come to Wakulla County, in the next 12 months. We don't know. So just so that you're aware that if that should happen, as of the way things are today, you would have the prerogative to come back and reestablish your priorities.
Well, let's go back to Okaloosa County again, that sewer expansion they got. They're taking a big risk that whoever they're doing that for is actually going to succeed. And if there's another economic downturn,
They're in trouble.
they're in trouble. They
My-
got to pay it back, right?
Yes, and my thought on that is that they have companies that are going to be signing agreements with them to bring those jobs in. So they'll have like a contract that's enforceable with a business that if they don't meet their needs, then they will go to them for repayment.
And then they'll declare bankruptcy and not worry about it.
Right. It's a pass-through that's not really a
I'm not
pass-through.
willing to put the citizens on hook for anything other than the county project, me personally.
That's true. We shouldn't be putting our citizens at
That's
risk
just
for.
my personal opinion.
So, but anyway, but you're right. But see, there are ways to structure this, and each project's different, but it all goes back, in my opinion, to what each Board of County Commissioners is willing to put at risk. And that's
I'm not going to put anything.
the bottom line.
Sure. Are you saying that if this board
come up.
supports a certain
Microphone.
project, if they put their signature on a support letter, then
They have to be a party to the application.
okay, well, let's say.
That's not what she's saying.
Mm, mm.
No. I know what you're doing.
And like I say, this,
Only if we're actually on the application are we on the hook. We write a support letter for somebody, we're not responsible for anything. That's like sending them a happy birthday card. That doesn't mean I gotta go to your party.
we have to be in that application.
How you explain things. It's all county.
Ask Susan it, let her speak.
Well, no, I'm happy, but Randy, you're exactly right. We have to be a party to the application, a party to the agreement, and we have to know up front. It can't be Triumph going, surprise, we've entered into an agreement and now you're 50, right. So everything's up front.
It would be difficult for us to sponsor any kind of private entity unless, let's say, they're putting their land up as collateral. We're going to get the land. In this case, if our first communication system gets clawed back, we still have that asset. And so we still have that benefit to the public. And so it'd be very difficult without some sort of security to the public that way.
But we need to keep in mind that they're competing for the same $63 million pot of money. So, if you look at it that way, we may not get that money. They may get it. The county may not.
That's exactly right.
So,
Well, but hopefully that is still a benefit to the county as
agree.
a whole
It should
without
be.
being risk to the taxpayers.
I mean, if a business came in and made 100 high-tech, $100,000 a year job, that's great for our county.
yes, I agree.
So,
But
good for them.
But if they create a business that's going to flop in 5 years,
Then let them take the risk.
but they've eat up part of our $63 million is what I'm saying.
Which is why there's a difference between sponsor and support.
Which might, going back to that, if they had a clawback, and let's say they did fail, and I don't know if they probably would never get their money back, but theoretically, we would have that money back to be reused again, right? If they paid back.
If we pay it back, but then
If the failed business.
If they
paid
get it
Right,
back,
if
if
they
they're
get it.
successful at clawing it.
Yeah.
They can ask, but they may not get
There's
it.
different mechanisms of clawing. It could be assets. You could, when you went into the agreement, like Cherie said, when you go into the agreement, there'll be, you could tie it to assets, you could tie it to a cash balance on something, you could bond it. There's a whole bunch of ways out there to get that back. So, the risk is there, but is it minimal? It's all according to what the project is.
I think there'll be a lot of bonding, I imagine.
Yeah.
The best example is that, to me, it's structured like the CDBG Economic Development Grant, where they will give you CDBG funds for business development, but when you come to the table with your application, you have to have agreements signed by the businesses who are going to participate, showing what they're going to put into the project should you get the CDBG award. And like I say, each one is structured differently and has different ways about it. So if we get an opportunity, then the board will have an opportunity to discuss it in detail when you have facts, if something like that should come to our attention.
Page 20 out of 35.
21.
Is there anything else before I move on to the next
Move
one?
on.
Okay.
I think they're asking you to speed up a little bit. Half our time, they got a lot of people probably want to talk.
Okay. All right. There's not much left. I did an email January, sent it out to, Jess and Patty did, to the county's interested citizens, making sure everybody knew if they wanted to submit a project. We were having the workshop. I got 2 abstracts. One was for City of St. Marks. They've revised their boardwalk. They've cut it down to 1,000 linear feet from 1.5, which reduced the amount accordingly.
I mean, the scope of the project really didn't change, right? So there's no reason to think it would get approved, when it didn't get approved first.
Not unless there's some way that when there's something about the project that's new. And I haven't had a conversation with St. Mark's, but
Well, do you know why they got rejected the first time?
they couldn't come up with the metrics for business creation or,
Economic impact.
Economic impact.
and then the Panacea Oyster Co-op, who is partnering with FAMU, they've already submitted their Triumph application. They were on our list of supported projects, and they just kind of wanted to refresh us, and they provided an abstract of the project they've already submitted. And then TCC WIA has not submitted any additional new projects, but in a conversation with Bob, I did ask him to prioritize his projects, which he did, and that's the order of his projects, which he knows that order doesn't necessarily reflect the opinion of the board.
These have already been through the pre-application project. They're going through application now.
They have submitted applications, but they've not gotten score sheets.
But we're not a party to this application at all either.
No, sir.
Only thing we're a party to is the library and the E911.
First responder.
So without beating a dead horse, the FAMU, Panacea, FAMU's on the hook. The TCC, WEI.
They're all on the list. But I say, since St. Mark's submitted a revised project, one of the issues, they want to get back on the list of supported projects, and of course everybody wants to be a priority. And I did not ask for any presenters today from the applicants, but I did ask that they attend the meeting, so if y'all had questions, you could ask them direct.
I don't mind putting St. Mark's on the list. I don't want to prioritize them. If they want to apply, more power to them.
Okay.
And I wouldn't mind signing a letter of support, just like any other application.
And then the other thing is, before we went any further with any prioritization, and you may decide today to direct me to bring back an agenda item, that we're not going to change our list at all. But one of the other options is knowing that moving forward, that Triumph is going to require that certification on every application, and I'll certainly learn a lot more when I go to or listen to the February 25th meeting, is maybe wait until that meeting occurs so I can bring back additional information for you to make a
Certification of what?
decision. Of what the new application is going to look like, what the certification is going to look like. I mean, I don't know what they're going to try and bind you to.
It's for our project you're talking
Anything else?
Unless you have any more questions or clarification.
about. Main thing I wanted to know is Gulf Triumph asking us to rank other projects besides the county project? Sounds to me like the answer is we can, but we don't have to. That's all I need to
The
do.
reason why they want to know if you support a project or if it's a priority, because someone could submit a project and Triumph like it, and they wouldn't want to go through the process of a term sheet and everything if it's not something the county wanted.
Okay.
It could be an industry that some counties, some cities, they have a list of the kind of businesses they want to recruit, and they have a list of the kind of businesses they don't want to recruit. So Triumph would just,
Really?
Well, and keep in mind, we got to keep a look at the long view. Okay, this isn't something that in our generation that we're going to spend up, and we shouldn't. These are funds that our kids will be spending. So realize we have an allocation in the county. So we have to be very careful at not saying, okay, we're going to blow all this allocation, because we don't know what's going to happen 5-10 years down the road. And that's where Triumph is as well. They're like, just hold on. Let's make sure we're making this is going to be a long-term play. So to tie up half or 3/4 of our money in the first 2 years, that's extremely foolish. We need to
We
be
can't
very,
stop individual citizens.
we
from taking
can't
a
stop
flight.
individual, but we can, based on our priority, what we prioritize, we need to be very, very, very careful at what we do, because we don't know what tomorrow brings. So that's what I'm trying to say is we got $63 million allocation over a 15-year period, or now it's a 13-year period,
I do
whatever that
plan to
is.
be alive in 15 years.
But, no, I'm just saying, though, this money will be spent, realize Triumph Gulf will be probably going on 30, 40, 50 years from now.
I might not live that way.
So,
The 15 years is the funding.
yeah, that's just the funding, so,
We could spend it
so
over
the idea is understand the idea behind this money is not to spend it today. It's to look at the long-term viability of this region, and what is that third leg of the stool. That's the purpose of it. So we have to keep that in mind so that we don't put all of it in one sector. It needs to be, because we don't know 10 years from now, Amazon could come to Wakulla County, and we've used it all sitting here going, we don't have any money. And that's my caution. We need to be very, very cautious and very careful.
And you being on the Triumph board, I'm assuming I'm not on the Triumph board, but
I'm
you know
on the
what I mean.
Gulf Consortium Board, yes.
That's the mentality of the Triumph board itself, right?
Yes, yes.
So they're kind of,
It's a long play. We got to look at it as a long play, guys. This isn't a short term, it's a long play. And it's not, we can't think of it today. We got to think of it a long play and make long play strategic decisions.
Well, looking at the long play, I'm looking at the two oyster projects, and they look very similar. We're going to let Triumph make the determination of which one they support.
It's all according to what y'all, if you want to prioritize one, or you want to support them, or just support them.
they could fund neither one of them.
They could fund neither one of them.
Or both.
Or both, that's right.
And I think there are members of the audience, if you had questions about either of the specific projects that could address what the differences might be, as well as address how their projects may be different from the Triumph project that was just awarded for the FSU Marine Lab in Franklin County.
I thought that was denied.
Mm-mm.
That was awarded.
They have a term sheet and they're negotiating it, and as
So
a
they have
meeting-
2 asterisks.
and on the 25th, they may be,
That's all but a done deal.
What is that, if you don't mind describing it to me real quick?
it's similar. It's to do research on oyster beds, oyster hatchery, seedlings, spat, and come up with what they see scientifically as some best practices. You know, based on their research.
Well, and the idea also,
Research and our two companies are trying to do operational, basically.
well, yeah, because what the FSU one is more along the lines of the same thing that was done in Chesapeake Bay, to study what happened, how they can revitalize the bay, bring the bay back from an oyster standpoint, an aquaculture standpoint, or from oyster standpoint, bring the bay back. And as part of that is seedlings, and they're going to try different mechanisms, and they'll touch all aspects of it, but it's not these two programs that we have here. It's not that model. That's not the same thing. It's close, but it's not the same thing.
Can you explain their clawback of how FSU is going to claw back the money if they don't succeed?
Well, I don't have privy to the term sheet, but when I was there at the meeting, there was not much discussion of clawbacks, because what this is, and I think, and I'm just guessing here, but if I was in a Triumph Gulf committee director, they're thinking if this is going to be a bigger play. This sets the table for our area here to say, here's what's going on, here's how we can fix it. Then that'll set the table for future projects like these, to say, here's how this works, and put some science behind it. That's just my thought. That's just me. But being at the meeting, that was kind of listening to behind the scenes and everything. That's what I picked up, is they were looking for something that said, give me some science behind, if we spend this money, there's some science that says it'll work. And we need a trial to do that, and that's what I think the FSU thing was.
The term sheet for FSU is online on the Triumph's website, and I do know that they were requested to come back with additional information, and I think they were working on getting that together, because the term sheet, I can send you a link, and it kind of gives you what they're looking at for performance measures, how they're graded, what the funding is, and then I apologize, I didn't bring it with me. I almost started to bring it and do it as a handout, and I'm like, this is just way too much information at one time.
Cherie, is that on our thing on page 11? And does that come out of Franklin County's money?
Yes.
Or so it's a Franklin County
That's
project?
what I understand.
It's not a discretionary project.
That's what I understand.
It's only 8 million out of 60 whatever million they get.
Flash and fire.
63.
Is the Gulf County, the unmanned systems project, is that an educational project also?
The Gulf County,
Unmanned.
Unmanned.
the
Okay.
drones. I think so. I think that's a workforce program.
Because it looks like out of 10 projects, 7 of them are education-based.
That's correct.
There's 4 that actually have signed agreements, and the other 6, they're negotiating the term sheets to develop the final agreement.
But it looks like so far, for sure, the priority has been toward educational instead of
I think
third-party business, commercial, economic impact.
I personally think that's because they're a lot easier, and they wanted some quick wins.
Easy to prove they work.
Get a flash in the public as well.
And it showed momentum. There's been a lot of pressure on Triumph to get money out the door, that projects weren't funded. So if I had been them, I would have gone cherry picking, and I would have said, what are the low risk projects that yield high returns? And I would have gone straight to workforce, because they are modeled after proven, true programs for the last 20 years, and you can get the data to support your metrics.
At some point, it seems like there's got to be a shift away from the educational aspect and get to the actual economy.
I think that's the transition that Triumph is trying to make. But like I say, they wanted to do some cherry picking. They wanted to get some money out the door. They wanted to see some success. Try their system that they had put into place. Then they could, fine tune it, and then they could deal with these really high investment projects where it's a lot more difficult to determine what your risks are and what your outcomes and your capital investments will be.
Education is a good long-term
It
investment.
is, but when you're clawing back from education, you're clawing back from the taxpayers. And so when you're clawing back from Amazon, nobody feels sorry for that,
Yeah.
I feel confident based on the data that's available through the Department of Education, the FETPIP. They have a whole division that does nothing but research data. I think there are probably other people that are familiar with it. I feel very confident that when Superintendent Pierce put his name on this application, that if he had one feeling that he could not have met these metrics, he would have never signed.
Bobby's very conservative.
Right.
I mean, I do feel that way about our school superintendent. I think that, and I've worked one-on-one with Sonny Chance, who put the application together, and they had to sit down with Department of Education and make sure that the data was there to support it. So on the workforce, and I used to be Vice President of Workforce Florida, so I'm very, very familiar with these kind of metrics. They make sense. They've been doing them for the last 20 years. So this data is there. There's a system for it. So whenever you say you can do these, there's usually the data there to support that you can do this many certifications.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Robert Seidler.
Hold on. Good afternoon, all of you, and thank you so much for this. As you know, I've been involved with a lot of things in the county over the years, and some seeming impossible things. But this, I would have to say, is the most proactive, coolest, best thing that we could ever imagine having here. And this means the 3 proposals that are going on related to the mission of Gulf Triumph which ruined the Gulf, to restore the Gulf. Out of all their proposals, there's only 3. That's FSU, that's funded, TCCWEI, FAMU, and the co-op. 3. They all work together, they all overlap, they're all needed. And it's only a little over 40 million out of the $1 billion. And remember, they ruined the Gulf. This is all they're putting in. This is restoration money. This is a big deal. We could be known for this forever in our 2-county area, especially Wakulla, if we go for the whole pony on it. And I really think we should. As you know or you don't, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on oysters. They're a keystone species. You take away oysters, a few hundred species of marine life disappear. You add oysters, they come back. If you want to know details, you can talk to Leo Lovell, who has witnessed this firsthand. It is a very, very big deal. Historically, oysters were taken. Everything's been taken from ecosystems. It's been a catch and grab. And what FSU is doing is they're funding research to get the wild catch oysters. What we're doing is we're growing oysters in a hatchery. We're putting them out. We're not taking anything. Those oysters are spawning. Each oyster spawns between 10 and 50 million young oysters a year. We have millions out there. They're recruiting, which means they're setting up all over the place again, and they're coming back. So they call it spat when oysters spawn because the sea turns white and spat is actually spit. It looks like a sea full of spit. And between the habitat cover and food, everything is coming back to life. Remember, we're giving, we're not taking. So this is such a unique opportunity for us. We will see tourism improve, we will see development improve, we will see workforce improve dynamically, and we already have seen it. I have been involved with this since the night before the first day. So I have witnessed every aspect of this happening, and it has not been easy in any regard. We are at a place where we're getting our own legs, and we need about a dozen hatcheries. If we had 3, it's still not going to be enough, and we will be moving hundreds of millions of oysters a year within 10 years. That's for sure. But we can't do it unless we all work together and we all get funded. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Catherine Walden?
Good afternoon. And I'm following with what Robert said. My name's Catherine Waldron. I'm the CEO of Panacea Co-op. And we're very excited about this opportunity. Our oysters have won a lot of taste tests, and this Bay Area produces some of the best oysters in the world. And just as an aside, we are actually providing the exclusive oysters to the Masters tournament in end of March. So we're very excited about that. Unfortunately, I do not get a ticket though. So anyway. Our focus, as Robert said, there's 3 proposals. Our focus is really, we partner with FAMU, but we're a business. So what we want to do is take all the people that are being trained and educated in aquaculture and actually put them to work. And what our proposal is asking for is $19.2 million. The total project is about $27 million. 30% of that will come in matching funds between FAMU and us. And we would be creating a commercial nursery and hatchery, as well as new processing techniques, which will allow us to extend the shelf life of oysters, which is about 2 weeks, which means you have to get them to the restaurants pretty fast. But these new processing techniques will allow you to extend that to up to a year or more, which opens up a whole new market, international cruise lines and things like that. And as we all know, Florida was the epicenter of oysters, and now it's not. And so we feel that this funding will allow us to stay in that forefront and also to stay in the forefront of the aquaculture industry, which is going to continue to grow because it's estimated that the world will need to double the food production by 2050. And you get 3 times more protein out of an acre of water than land. So people are going to increasingly look to the land, to the water as a place to have this happen. So we have a really great opportunity in this county to create a great business model from the co-op. And I just like to point out that we have about, at one point we had about 9 of the ranchers in the co-op who came to show their support. We had about 13 or more of them sign a letter of support in our application, as well as the Florida Lodging and Restaurant Association, the Wakulla Chamber of Commerce, and Fresh from Florida have all supported this application because we see it as a great way to actually put people to work after they've been trained and educated. So thank you.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Would you be fine being personally on the hook for this $19 million? Are you that confident in it?
I've run businesses before, and I've never failed. So personally, I don't have $19.2 million, but I think that's not going to be an issue. I do not anticipate that being an issue. Right now, we don't have enough oysters to sell. I mean, the demand is there. Everything we pull from the water is there. People are waiting. Whole Foods, Inland, Halperns are all waiting for us to come back to full production.
But
So
FAMU is they're the applicant.
they're the fiscal agent. We're
FAMU will actually, and they've agreed to be on the hook for the 19
yes,
million.
yes, they're not here today. Satya and Victor are sick, so they're unable to be here. But yes, they are committed to this project. And there's some letters of support from their university presidents.
Thank you.
So, question, looking at the 2 projects that are between you and TCC, they're very similar, okay? What's the distinction between the 2? Do you have the market share, the market for all the spat 2 different?
Yeah, I mean, as I think Robert mentioned, I think there's room for everybody, and I'm all about competition. Ours is more of a commercial entity, of course. And I don't want to speak for Bob, so he can talk about it, but we're focused really more on just producing it so we can kind of get it out there and sell it. What we're doing now is we're pulling spat in from Alabama and Louisiana, and that mortality rate goes up because it's not from here. So having the spat available, 100 million or more, is kind of what we need because the mortality goes down and it just is a better quality overall.
Yep, you need 100 million spat.
At least 100 million.
Start spitting, Joe.
Yep. Jack Rudlow.
All right, where to begin, quite. Let me just tell you this. Gulf Specimen has been declared by National Geographic to be a world-class facility. We have been in business for over 52 years in the same location. And we had our proposal reviewed in depth by the Center of Economic Forecasting. They do charge $25,000. They essentially waived it for Gulf Specimen because they considered we're such a valuable organization. They were appalled at the rejection by the Triumph Board. We had another economist, Dr. Leonard Elsie, reviewed the proposal in depth. And when they're saying that we have 2 jobs and $2.5 million per job, it's ludicrous, and it's not true. We said over 5 years, we're going to have 19 positions played. Let me tell you this about Gulf Specimen. We have an intern program from Florida State University, which is crammed. We can't hold any more interns that come down. The one good thing that I really saw out of this proposal is that it made us do an in-depth investigation of who is Gulf Specimen, who are we, what are we doing, are we succeeding? Yes, we've developed anti-cancer drugs, and yes, we've been part of major research programs around the world. But the fact is, when I see these letters from students that have come through the program, from professors at different universities, state people, all writing support and extolling the jobs that we have done, and the fact is that when our people have their name on a job application, they often get the jobs. And we have some glowing letters of support from environmental centers, state government, universities, SeaWorld, Gulf World. It just kind of goes on. Here's this funky little place in Panacea that I started as a shack with a leaky roof back in 1964, 65. And it's kind of built up to this organization. It employs people. It is a major contributor to the economy. We have 26,000 people coming through. We have 250 regional schools. When I left Gulf Specimen this morning, there were 4 school buses up there from Thomas County. It's ongoing, it's real. We are not asking you to build a water system. We have a water system. We have over 100,000 gallons under roof. We have spent over $1 million developing technology of sterilized water, feeding animals, doing this thing, working out this technology over the years. I'm going to ask you to rank and support us in this. And claw back, we're able to claw about as much as anybody else is going to be able to claw in this thing. We are real, we exist. We're not a theoretical thing, we're not going to, we are doing, and we need your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, one question, Jack. Have you addressed their concerns, Gulf Triumph's concerns, and forwarded it to them?
Oh yeah, well, first, Dr. Rick Harper, when we basically asked him about that, said, well, then you should send a letter of rebuttal. We did. And our last decision was we are withdrawing the existing application. We have a new one. We can completely support that we can give certifications. And basically the certifications is just icing on the cake from what we are already doing. The problem is that Gulf Specimen is so unique and so weird in its own right that there isn't another program that plugs in. We're not a regular aquarium. We're a working facility. And because we're so different, it's hard to pick out another national certification. And believe me, we've gone the gauntlet. We worked out the whole business. So we are standalone and we are strong, and we make Wakulla County a much better place. So support us.
Mr. Chairman, so did they reject you at the pre-application stage, or did
No,
you
the final application.
You got past the pre-application?
Oh yeah, we did that and everything else. And I really urge you to read the application, because it tells all these wonderful things. And another thing that we want to get doing, and Mike remembers this, is the oysters on trees. It is a wonderful program. It works. It's great to have aquaculture, and I'm all for it. But if we can't build up our own reefs, we're not going to be winning the game. And the idea of taking brush and trees and putting it out in the water, letting the oysters grow on it, I think that's how Apalachicola Bay was created, through hurricanes. We could be doing the same thing.
So you mentioned the 19 jobs. Did your economist outline those jobs, and they rejected it, and they said we don't agree with the metrics?
No, they didn't even do that. They just said, well, for the first 2 years you're asking for essentially $5 million. So within the first 2 years, we're calculating only that you have 2 additional people that you're putting onto, which is, of course, the planning stages, and therefore that's $2.5 million each. They didn't read the proposal, and that's what Dr. Julie Harrington said, who is the Center for Economic Forecasting. When she got the comments, she said, I don't understand it. She said it doesn't look like they even read the proposal, and their conclusions were totally wrong. So we are going back to this. We are resubmitting, and we're going to fight this thing through as long as we have to, because it's a good project and we do good things.
I think a lot of it is persistence, because, hey, whether you're going out for football or this project, a lot of it is just first cut. You didn't make the first cut, are you going to hang in there and keep fighting it through or not?
But well, we got 52 years. I'm ready to do it for the next 52 years. I should say Cyprus will be. Okay.
Okay, Jack.
Justin.
Tim, did you want to comment?
I'll be glad to comment.
I'm just speaking on behalf of a large group of oyster growers that feel that it's unfair competition to support our competition with a grant that large, and we don't feel it's necessary. There's quite a few more hatcheries coming online. There's one in Apalachicola that's built by private funds, and we support WEI, we support FSU, we support FAMU. I don't think they have the expertise in aquaculture. They haven't been doing it. But when you look at a piece of pie, like David said, I wouldn't rush to support something that may compete with
a more viable project that the public needs and our community needs. I think we're all using our own money. We've gone out on a limb, and there's 5 other processing houses, or there's 4 other in the county, and I don't see a need to support private industry over their own competition. So that's my point.
Thank you. Fill out a card. Bob, did you want to say anything? Yes?
I don't know how many of you 2 weeks ago were at the Oyster Festival, but it was huge. I mean, just one of the sheriffs estimated 6,000 people were there. And I would like to remind everybody, and maybe this gets lost a little bit, but every one of the booths that were there went through the Wakulla Environmental Institute program. We're very proud of the new industry that has started. And I'd like to make a correction. And President Murtaugh and I have a bet, and well, actually more than a bet. He told me that we need to be the world's largest oyster aquaculture center, and you have 7 years to do it. And he said that publicly at the last board meeting, at the last Board of Trustees board meeting at WEI. 85% of the world's oyster beds are gone and lost, probably forever. We will never be able to fill the world's demand for oysters. My goal is 500 million oyster seed a year. That's what I'm looking to get out in the oil, in the water, and we'll get there. We will get there. Nobody thought we would be where we are today. God knows I didn't think that we'd be where we are today. It's really exciting. What our focus is with our proposal, the $13.5 million, training is certainly a part of it. We also, anything that we do that is for money, we're going to bid out. I have recused myself for any bidding processes since I used to be a part of the co-op, but am no longer a part of the co-op. We're in favor of what the co-op is looking to do. We support that. We don't need 1 or 2 hatcheries. We're going to need 20 hatcheries. If you look at France and what they're doing, they've got 20 hatcheries there. We need all of these hatcheries. Actually, all of the hatcheries that I know of, we're working in concert with them. Paul in Franklin County, who's got looking to do a big hatchery out there, and they're building a building now, is working with us and partnering with us. FSU, the last thing Gary said before he left, after he got notice that he received the money for FSU, Bob, I'll be talking to you because we need to work together as partners. We are really excited what's going on. We embrace all of these projects, and we hope all of them are in the money. Do you have any questions for me for what we're looking to do?
Oh, drone technology is, what jobs do you see for that?
The drone technology is going to be the future. We have gone from 1 drone course to now 4 drone courses. We're going to add a 5th separate drone course in this fall. Everything from real estate to environmental issues such as checking on red cockaded woodpecker nests, to prescribed burns, wildfire monitoring. Besides the military application, we are looking to partner with the military bases to and actually get some of their trainers. This would bring in, I think, about 200 drones with highly sensitive cameras on there that are very expensive. Not only are we going to do aerial drones, we're going to be doing surface drones and subsurface drones. This is a really exciting new industry that's coming up, and the experts are telling us that this is like the beginning of the internet. And we're at the very beginning of it, and we're got a seat at the table, and we're really excited. We've had about 5 separate meetings with Gulf Triumph that they've requested with us. They came to us because they knew that we had already started this, and we're doing drones with or without Gulf Triumph. But we could go a lot faster if we had the 1.5 million. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Devin,
Northway.
Northway.
Dallas works for the refuge shop, was telling me they check on the woodpeckers with drones.
I wouldn't
All right.
check the drones.
How we all doing?
Good.
I'm Devin Northway. I work with the Panacea Oyster Co-op. Very grateful for that job there because of all our seed died, mostly because of the storm, but also because we're getting third-rate seed from out of state, which I'll talk about more. First and foremost, I know we said it plenty of times, but I want to ensure that the money from the grant for this project does not come from the community in any shape, way, or form. Instead, the grant for the Panacea Oyster Co-op is brought into our community to help the economic growth, create jobs, and move the aquaculture industry further. Now, the Panacea Oyster Co-op's top priority is to create a commercial hatchery and nursery to grow oyster seeds spawned from the wild oysters from our water. This is the biggest problem, the biggest hindrance right now for the farmers in our area. We have to get seed out of state, and normally it's the bottom of the batch that the community did not want to buy. This third-party seed, this small amount that we could get anyway, has a mortality much higher in our waters than in other places. This will change when we build our hatchery and spawning seed from our waters. The benefit from having our own seed close by and from our waters is indescribable. You be the best farmer in the world, but without product, without seed, you have nothing to grow. You have nothing at all. And Commissioner Thomas mentioned there has to be a stop to research at one point, and honestly, not to insult anybody whose goals is otherwise, but I think we have enough research right now. You can ask any craftsman worth their salt how much they learned from a textbook. And we right now just need seed. We're ready to grow. We have all the farmers ready who want to earn money, want to earn their living on the water, but we just don't have enough product to do so. We have the sales, the demand is always there, but we just need that seed. It doesn't matter how many hatcheries. I know it's been thrown around that every county should have a hatchery. I say every county should have 10. And then, yeah, we could do it. Now, another thing I do want to address, perhaps it's a little bold, but I keep hearing a level of unfairness, this unfairness, and maybe I'm just frustrated with this small group of loud individuals, but what I'm upset with is the hypocrisy behind it. I want you to imagine a rancher who has to borrow money and hope they have enough money to get gas for their boat, a rancher who puts their livelihood on the water, and praying that their third-party seed from out of state is fruitful. Now imagine another farmer, one with a pool of money from something else, maybe like a successful real estate company or a successful real estate development company to pull money from. Money to get the equipment he wants, the boat he needs, and all the seed he wants without concern of what grows. Is there an unfair advantage there? Should something be done about this? Do we need another workshop? But moving past this, ignoring the benefits of economic growth and creation of jobs for a second more, if you are in the oyster industry, does a fair competition really apply to something that creates a hatchery? Any rancher worth their salt sees the importance of having our own seed. The benefit for our ranchers, those with a pool of money or not, is obvious and unparalleled.
Wrap it up.
All right. Now, furthermore, anybody in this county can apply for the grant, so nothing's stopping them, and we should make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, anybody? Anybody else in the public? All right, we're adjourned.
We filled up 2 hours.
I'm just right, Chuck.
Got 15 minutes to break?